Welcome to this webinar, Leading in Disorienting Times. I'm your host, Michael Hanna from the Hanna Strategy Group, and with me is Peter Dickens. Peter, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure.
And so we're honored to be partnering with the Tyndale Leadership Center to bring you this content. And Leading in Disorienting Times is not only a webinar, there's actually a book and a program launching this January. So more on that at the end of our presentation, but we're honored and excited to be able to bring this material. Thanks for bringing it to our audience, Peter.
My pleasure.
So just a little bit of an introduction, so you know who you're speaking with here. So Peter Dickens is the head of the Tyndale Leadership Center, and just do it like that. Head of the Tyndale Leadership Center, and Peter is an internationally recognized speaker. He's a facilitator and strategist in the area of leadership and change. He's worked with groups across Canada, many countries, including Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, England, Egypt, Central Asia. Peter's currently the executive director of the Open Learning Center and the director of the Tyndale Leadership Center for Tyndale University College in Toronto. And here he also teaches leadership in the graduate school. In fact, we're actually in the Tyndale building as we speak. For 31 years, Peter's provided strategic and organization development leadership and advice to a wide range of private and public and social sector organizations. Formerly the Vice President of Organization Development at Trillium Health Center in Mississauga. And he blends his consulting and teaching roles at Tyndale as well as his private practice with research. Peter received his PhD in Leadership and Change from Antioch University, where research was focused on developing a deeper understanding complex and adaptive systems. So really glad to have you with us, Peter.
Thank you.
Well, it's interesting. We're talking about leading in disorienting times, and just so everyone knows where we're coming from, I guess, Peter, you went through recently your own disorienting time, right?
Yeah, I sure did. 10 years ago, I was treated for throat cancer, and very successfully. But over time, all that radiation treatment actually deteriorated my jawbone to the point where they had to remove it.
Wow.
And instead of replacing it with bone, it was amazing. That was the plan. But in the end, they actually replaced it with muscle.
Wow.
So I'm having to learn how to, basically learn how to talk and train muscle that was never supposed to be there, how to open and close my mouth. So it's a bit of a change. But a friend recently told me that instead of being loud and fast and a bit of a bully when I talked, I was now much quieter and gentler. So it's maybe not such a bad thing. So I hope it's legible for everybody.
Well, I'm definitely thankful, Peter. I've observed how you haven't drawn back in your lectures, in your speaking engagement, in your research, and we're all going to be beneficiaries of that today. So thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
All right, I'm going to hand over the floor to you. It's all yours, Peter.
So we chose the title for the book very intentionally. Jack Mesereau, who's a leading theorist in the whole area of learning, and adult learning in particular, suggests that all transformative learning starts with what he calls a disorienting dilemma. In other words, we're confronted with a situation, a circumstance, something happens that just blows away all of our categories, all of our assumptions, everything that we knew how to do well before just suddenly doesn't seem relevant. And it can be terrifying. But my experience is whether I look at business or I look at healthcare, or increasingly as we look at the church in North America, we're seeing wave after wave of disorienting dilemmas. And learning how to lead in that context is a real challenge. You can look at the landscape of high-tech companies where yesterday's breakthrough innovation is now obsolete.
Yeah.
And we have an amazing example of it right here in Canada with BlackBerry, right? Leading edge technology that now is very much at the back of the pack. But Kodak is an example and so on. But I also think people in the church are facing disorienting times.
Yes.
We are in a post-Christian, postmodern culture where faith is not only not mainstream, it's not relevant. Nobody's inviting us to the conversation. And I think for a lot of people, that's it's very disorienting. You know, we look overseas and we see where a revolution one day has morphed into one of your own.
Exactly.
Egyptian example.
Yep.
Suddenly it becomes the autocracy that they tried to replace. So for leaders, everything feels kind of out of control. Then they're paralyzed, and we're seeing that more and more and more, where politicians just don't know where to turn.
Definitely. I mean, there definitely seems to be this lack of sense of control, and I'm really looking forward to this content that you're bringing forward today, Peter, because all kinds of specific challenges come out of this highly dynamic environment to lead in, and we're learning a lot more how leadership has a lot more to do with influence and nurturing the environment itself in which everyone is. So, you know, I want to ask our audience, actually, here's an opportunity for you guys to talk back to us. We're going to launch a poll right now, and we want to know a little bit about some of these specific challenges that you're facing in the disorienting context where your organization may be living right now. So what's going to happen is you're going to see a poll appear on your screen in a moment. And you'll be asked the question as a leader in your organization, which of these 4 specific challenges are you facing? And you can answer multiple, choose multiple of those selections. So here we are, we've launched the poll. Please select your answers. You can select multiple answers if you want to. And we'll keep the poll open just for a minute, so you can go ahead and do that. And then we'll share the results. Again, if you want to choose more than one answer, you can do that. Leave it open for 30 more seconds. Wonderful. All right, I will close the poll. Thank you very much for your insights here, and let's go ahead and share the results. So it looks like one of the most common challenges that folks say that they're facing are really you've got a close first, second, and third inability to articulate trends and patterns over time, followed by a close second, high turnover or low engagement among clients or members, and then lack of clarity of purpose throughout the organization. And then about a fifth of those who answered said that they've got high turnover or engagement among staff, which is an interesting one because you've got the engagement among staff, but it's somehow not translating to the clients or the membership. So we'll learn a little bit about how to navigate that today. So go back into your slides then.
So, I mean, it does present an enormous dilemma for leaders. The time frames in which we're expected to operate are shorter and shorter and shorter. You know, somebody today talks to me about their 5-year plan. I'll be honest, I tune them out because there is no such thing as a 5-year plan. Really, and in businesses or organizations that are heavily dependent on capital investment, that's a scary trend. How do I know when to invest? I remember watching this, we were building brand new, beautiful cardiac ORs at Trillium 12 years ago, and then reading how heart surgery was going to move to become day surgery where the patient was in and out in one day. And we're building cardiac ICUs for 3-week length of stay. And I'm thinking, man, I hope that's flexible space because in 10 years we may not need it. Now, it hasn't happened that fast, but it's not far off. We have fewer and fewer chances, so particularly second chances. You're in a sense gambling on the future, and if you get it right, it's a home run. But boy, if you get it wrong, it has huge consequences. And so what I'm seeing more and more and more is that we need a whole new way of seeing the world, new metaphors, new language. Far too many people are still deeply rooted in a very mechanistic way of seeing the world. They actually dream of the time when the organization will run like a machine. And I think what we need to start to embrace, and frankly I think is biblically much more solid, is a much more organic metaphor. A metaphor that talks about constant dynamic change, adaptation, emergence, and so on. The big one that I find, and it shows in the poll, Ron Heifetz would say that leadership has a dilemma. We're used to being down on the dance floor and being engaged in the dance on a day-to-day basis. But we're not so good at being up on the balcony and being able to see the patterns, the trends.
Yes.
And the real dilemma is to be in both places at the same time. Am I watching the trends? Am I aware of the trends? But at the same time, am I deeply engaged in relationship with the people on the dance floor?
Yeah.
And I think that, I joked with a client the other day, our problem for many people is we're neither. We're trapped in the meeting in the hallway in between.
Yes.
So we're not up, we're not down, and we're off to the side. And I think that's problematic for a lot of people.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience. In high school, I was an artist, and I remember doing a portrait of somebody. And I zoomed in and I got every detail perfect on the left eye. I mean, it may as well have been a photograph. And then I did the right eye and the nose, and I'm usually not very good at noses, but this nose was awesome. And the mouth, when I did the mouth, I mean, that was a mouth of mouths, like it was perfect. Every component was perfect. But when I stepped back and was finished and I looked at the whole face, it was so warped and ugly, because the left eye was higher than the right eye and a little bit larger, and the nose, and so they weren't in proper context. And what I started doing then is after that, I always started with the outline, and I learned to make sure that I was periodically stepping out and looking at the whole picture before going into the details, and that certainly adapted that as well in both community service, church, as well as business.
Lovely, that's a brilliant example. One of the places I think we get tripped up is language around what is complex, what is complicated, what is simple. And my colleague Brenda Zimmerman and others have developed, I think, a really nice metaphor. She would say that we have simple tasks, simple problems to deal with. And she would use a metaphor of baking a cake. Right? You need a recipe. The trick is don't get too creative, follow the recipe, and you'll get the same results over and over and over again. Right? So you have a situation in human resources, you have a policy, apply the policy. Pretty straightforward. Right? There's a problem to be solved, and you have a solution based on best practices and experience. Complicated is like launching a rocket. You have a problem to be solved. It's to get that rocket launched. And you may not have done it before, but you've done similar things.
Right.
You know, whether it was a jet fighter or whatever. But and so you need complicated plans. You need to work out all of that detail and then sequence and then time it in a giant really a giant project plan. And then over time, you'll get better and better and better at it. So in business or organizational life, we're facing a new situation, but we can draw on relevant experience to solve that problem. Complex is trying to raise children where, formulas and rules only have certain value and some may be actually counterproductive. Not many people, kids can be challenging, obviously, but not many people would describe raising children as a problem to be solved. It's a potential to evoke, to bring into being, but almost from the minute they're born, that child is being influenced by factors over which you have no control. Whether they're social and then school and sports and television and all those different things. And you see parents, my own brother tried to cocoon their children in such a tight space, but they have no social context. Right. And I think more and more what we're looking at in organizational life are complex problems. Yeah. They're emergent. We don't have a bunch of experience to draw on. And so we have to fundamentally change our approach. And that really is what the book is all about, is how do we do that? How do we re-envision that whole process? So I use this matrix, it's commonly referred to as a Stacy matrix, to sort of frame that in a different way. You look at the situation and you ask yourself, how close are we to agreement on what the problem is? And how sure are we on what to do about it? So if as a leadership team we know what the problem is and we know what to do about it, and we're pretty sure it's going to work based on past experience, well then that's pretty simple, just go do it. Right. Don't form a committee, don't form task forces, just do it. It gets complicated in one or two directions. Either we've never seen it before and we can't agree on what to do about it. And so we can't agree on what to do about it. And so we have a lot of different voices, or we have no clue. It's a process of experimentation. Yeah. Heifetz will call that adaptive leadership. And when you have a combination of those, you're in a zone of complexity where you need a whole new toolbox. And unfortunately, it's that upper right-hand corner that is anarchy, that terrifies people. And so what they try to do is, rather than accepting complexity for what it is, they try to tame it. Right. And make it simple. H.L. Mencken, the famous American journalist, I love the line. He once said, for every problem, there is a solution that is, for every complex problem, there is a solution that is simple, clear, and dead wrong. Right? We try to apply a simple solution to a complex situation, and we're going to miss every time.
Interesting. So there's really an element here of, rather than trying to resist the realities of the complexity in the scenario where we are, rather than trying to force predictability where it really is not forcible, there's an element of embracing
Absolutely.
And welcoming that complexity.
Absolutely.
And dealing with it head on.
Absolutely. And embracing some of the critical elements of complexity, which is systems that have a natural ability to self-organize. Because what systems models teach us over and over and over again is that when people are left to their own devices, they will self-organize to find order that works.
Beautiful.
And what we try to do is impose order.
Yes.
and create structures instead of just letting it happen. I know that sounds a bit new agey, but letting the change emerge from the bottom up versus the top down.
Well, it's actually quite biblical, because even if I use Jesus and the early church as an example, where he said to his disciples, it's better for you that I go, because if I go, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit, and then you will be able to yourselves as an organic whole be able to self-organize rather than be dependent always on top-down leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, a classic example in the healthcare space is the whole issue of hand washing, right? We know hospitals have real challenges with hospital-borne infection and so on. Over and over and over again, we see these top-down, mandated, legislated, rules-based, thou must, thou must, thou must, that never achieve more than about 70% compliance.
Right.
My colleague Michael Gardner and others working in that space advocate a process that says somewhere someone is doing something that works for them. We call it positive deviance. They're doing the wrong thing, but for the right reasons.
I see.
So, and he really has myriad examples, but letting people decide for themselves how they will set up the process on their unit that everybody washes their hands achieves 98% compliance.
Yeah.
But it's different in every circumstance.
Yeah.
And that drives the best practice people nuts. Because they want there to be one best practice across an industry.
Yes.
And it leads me to this, I hear all the time that sort of, we have to understand, Peter, people don't like change. And I know for a fact that's not true. I ask all the time, and I always get people in a seminar who love change. And I get people who hate it. The ones that tend to be the ones that don't like it.
Yes.
And therefore want to project that on everybody. But what we need to understand that everybody changes over time, but they change for their own reasons and at their own time. And it's very difficult to predict. Right? What will attract people to change in one set of circumstances, but maybe not another? And it tends to be very situation specific. So what might attract you to a change could be very different from what attracts me, but in a different circumstance, that could reverse. Right? Simon Sinek, and I think we sent folks a link to this video,
Yes.
Does a great job with that, but also research by Daniel Pink. I think we sent that link as well.
We didn't send the Daniel Pink one.
But he's a motivational economist. Says all the research studies show that by and large, money is not a motivator for improved performance. You need to pay people enough money that money is not a huge issue. But people are motivated by, attracted to autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Yes.
Chance to work it out on their own and figure out their way of doing something. A chance, enough opportunity to learn and get better at it. And then a deep attachment to doing something that matters. My favorite metaphor, and we do talk about it in the book, is if you think about a situation where you want to throw a rock into a bucket 15 feet away. In your brain, you may not know it, but in your mind, you're doing a lot of math, a lot of, what's the angle, what's the speed, what's the, rate that's going to drop off, all that. I'm not a mathematician, but you're doing a lot of math. And then once you get it, the trick is to keep doing it the same way.
Right.
And a lot of leaders approach change the same, in that same mindset I'm just going to keep doing what I did before, no matter what the change is, because it worked.
Right.
My challenge back to them is, all right, the problem is you're not leading rocks. All right. What would happen if you wanted to throw a live bird into your bucket? Right? It's unpredictable, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
And we have a lot of fun in seminars or courses about that, because people will suggest things like, very quietly say, well, turn the bird into a rock. Bang it on the head so it's unconscious, then it can't fly.
Right.
Or wrap it in duct tape so you don't hurt it, but again, then all your old means will apply. My favorite was one person said, well, I would build an invisible tunnel from you to the rock, to the bucket, and release the bird so that it thought it was free, but it really had no choice.
Yeah.
And he laughed and said, we refer to that as an HR policy manual. And of course, the obvious answer is, don't start with you, start with the bucket.
Yeah.
Put something in the bucket that the bird is attracted to.
Yes.
And if you have more than one bird, you have more than one element of birdseed. So when I'm coaching, when people are talking about a change initiative, we very quickly start talking about what's a birdseed. And you know that from Daniel Pink's work, but also, bottom line, you have to get to know people.
Yeah.
Right? You have to observe their patterns of behavior, what attracted them in the past, but you also have to get to know them through conversation and listening carefully to what it is that they need to see if that couldn't be an element in your change strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that may mean beginning a change initiative with listening.
What a concept.
Rather than going into the back room and coming up with the solution, let's listen. Let's put our ears to the ground. Let's make sure that we have an accurate pulse on what it is that we're about to step into. What are the felt needs, and testing along the way. Is the solution? Are the solutions that we're developing really going to solve those needs and resonate with the recipients?
That's such an important point, because we're still trapped in the literature and the research we refer to as great man theory of leadership, that somehow I'm supposed to have all the answers. I got the vision from God or from wherever, and I have all the answers, and if I go and do it by myself,
yes,
that will be better somehow magically. And it's a huge turn for people to say, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
It's too complex, and I'm too far from the problem to have that answer. So I need to talk to the people closest to the problem. The nurse at the bedside, the salesperson on the floor, the person leading a home church, whatever it might be. They're the ones that will give you the data and help you co-create that strategy.
So I have a question here, because what some people may feel is that there's a risk in what we're saying here of a lack of order. Are we talking about a lack of structure, a lack of order, or are we talking about an organic way of implementing and executing that sense of order?
I actually think it would be more helpful to let go of the word order, because it has a sense of rigidity and structure,
right,
and embrace the notion of coherence. The reason we asked a question on the poll, can everybody in your organization articulate the purpose of your organization? What are we here to do?
Yes.
And are they fully committed to the values that would now create the framework within which that purpose will be achieved? And then, did you hire bright people? I mean, I ask it all the time. When was the last time you hired people that were stupid, lazy, and dishonest? Of course, they'll laugh and say, well, I never do. Well, then why do you treat them like they are? Why do you impose so many rules? Right?
Very good.
I was talking to a woman the other night who works in the children's aid scenario. She has to get 4 approvals to requisition a bed for a child. 4 levels, and she has a master's degree.
Right.
And she knows the scenario in the home. And by the way, the law requires that each child have a separate sleeping space, and this is the second child. Of 4 levels of approval.
Right.
So it's not about having no order, but it's about re-envisioning what we mean by order.
Excellent.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you for that.
So the other thing about people and change is it drives me crazy when people talk about a change initiative, and the first thing they'll say is, how are we going to get everybody on board?
Yeah.
And then in their mind, they immediately start thinking of that handful of people that are going to fight this tooth and nail.
Yes.
When you watch how systems change, they in fact change in very consistent ways. If you introduce a change in an idea, you'll have 10% of the people. Now, this is a classic adoption curve. Roughly 10% will say, yeah, I love it, let's do it, I'm all for it, my idea in the first place, whatever. And you have an equal number at the back end saying, over my dead body.
Right.
You'll have a 15, 20% up towards the front that are saying, yes, if. And they're not to be confused with resistance.
Yes.
They just need to know, they may need to know, depending on their personality, they may need to know, are people going to be taken care of? Or they may need to know first steps. They may need to know more background. They just have more questions. And you'll have an equal number at the back end saying no because, right? We tried it before, there's no money,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. And the vast majority are sitting in the middle saying, whatever, not my problem, I don't care. If we focus all our energy on that group of no's, what happens with the front end is they lose heart.
Very good.
They lose interest. And here's the key. Systems dynamics teaches us that you need 30 to 35% of the members of any system to commit to something. And you get what Malcolm Gladwell refers to in his book, The Tipping Point.
Yes.
You get that tipping point and you get movement. So if you look at Jesus' model of leadership, when he preaches to the 5,000, he's not preaching to the 5,000.
Right.
He is speaking to 12. He builds a model just like this.
Yes.
12 who equip. The Holy Spirit comes, and suddenly it's 5,000. You can see in the book of Acts that tipping point
Yes.
of the church. And we're so hung up on how do we get everybody on board with whatever it is that we lose energy, we lose commitment. So when people say to me, you know, if you're not on the bus, you better get off the bus, or the bus is blah, blah, blah. My reaction is, okay, I'll accept the bus as a metaphor, but it's not an express. Let people get on where they get on.
Right.
And as you know, there's a
Right.
biblical parable about the landlord and how he pays his workers. It says the same thing,
Yes.
right?
Very good.
So this to me is what's critical. When a critical mass of agents, of participants in the system, begin to adhere what in complexity we refer to as min-specs, the simple rules that are going to guide the patterns of behavior, then the system will go critical. And I would argue that in an organization clarity of purpose or mission, clarity of values, clarity of vision. Provide those min specs, right?
Can you give us an example of what those, maybe just an example where we can see sample of min specs and where critical change takes place?
Well, so for example, I'll use an example from Simon Sinek's video.
Yeah.
He says, and the point he makes here is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need a powerful and compelling why when you're in business, right? That is going to attract people that want to do that. So Apple says, you know, we want to be disruptive in the space of technology. And we'll do that by building great computers that are easy to use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So people are drawn to them. People are drawn to values. They want to work in environments where the values align with their own values. When I was at Trillium Health Center, I do orientation every month to talk about mission, vision, values. And we hired on the basis of values. We promoted on the basis of values because we wanted people who had bought into the same things. So if you're not committed to teamwork, don't come work here.
Right. So these min specs that you're referring to are less about aligning on the do's and don'ts and more about aligning on the vision and the values.
And on a project level, it can be about the do's and don'ts.
Okay.
So, min specs might be, all right, we need to reduce, I'll use a healthcare example again, time to get an admitted patient in from the emergency department to a bed on a medical floor.
Right.
Chronic problem in every hospital. Min spec number one, we must reduce that time by 25%.
Right.
Number two, we must do that within 3 months. Number three, we must engage all relevant parties in that process.
Right.
Now go to it.
Yeah.
So now a team has a clear understanding of what they're supposed to be doing, but given complete freedom to figure out how to do that.
Very good.
And then that outcome will be monitored on a regular basis.
Very good.
So we refer to it as tight, loose, tight. Clear definition of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Lots of freedom and flexibility to experiment and learn.
Right.
Clear accountability at the end.
It's interesting because there's an element there of giving them permission to fail.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talk a lot in my own research. We talk a lot about creating a safe fail culture.
Excellent.
Right? Yeah, we don't have blame. We immediately converge when it doesn't work, figure out what to do, what can we learn, move on.
Beautiful.
So min specs are really those must do, must not do to achieve the purpose. What I like to remind people is you want the least number of rules possible to produce the desired end result behavior.
Beautiful.
Right? The least number of rules possible. Because what we tend to do is we get into max specs. Oh, and don't forget, and you must, and don't. And it just wears people out.
And it brings me a little bit, I recently did a webinar on how to inspire CRM adoption. So it's just a particular technology in the sales world, but it really, we zoomed in on the difference between compliance and adoption.
Absolutely.
Where compliance is you've got to comply to the policy. I don't care whether your heart's in it or not, just obey it. Versus adoption where man, if they really take that sense of ownership, and what does the word adoption mean? If I adopt a child, I'm taking that which was not mine and making it my own as though it were originally mine to begin with. And so that sense of personal ownership, if the members of your team or your system have taken on adoption, then even if you don't show them how, they will figure it out themselves because they want it.
So there's another word I would banish from the lexicon of organizations, and that's the word buy-in.
Yeah.
Maybe that's 2 words, because I want to replace it with ownership.
Ownership.
That you own this outcome to the point where I may not even understand what it is you've done to achieve that result. If I'm the leader, but I see the result, and that's what matters to me.
Yeah. One of our audience members here highlights an interesting point here. And perhaps it's aligned with your min specs versus max specs, but it's kind of differentiating between what are the nice to haves versus what are the critical fundamentals.
Very good. Yes.
Giving them flexibility on those nice to haves, make it their own.
Absolutely. And what I've seen over time is that the energy, it can be a bit disorienting for people at first, right?
Yeah.
Because not only do we have this theory that says the manager or the boss or the pastor has to have all the answers as a sort of way for them to think, but we create organizations that think the same way.
Yeah.
Just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's not my problem. I met a fellow who worked at a big steel mill up north. I couldn't believe this guy was a leader in amateur sports and the scouting movement and all sorts of different environments. But he said every day I came to work for 30 years, put my head on the post at the entrance, picked it up on the way out.
Yes.
And I thought that is, and yet in the community for free, he is giving unbelievable leadership because he has the autonomy to do that.
I love it. I mean, I remember a time even in my own short career so far where, it was you're expected to, your brain is for work, your hands and your mind,
Absolutely.
but your heart is for your family and your friends. But now that is not the paradigm. Companies want your whole passion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's vital that we think of people as sort of 3 interconnected parts. Actually, there's the functional them, but there's the personal them. And if we as leaders don't understand the personal experiences and challenges that people are facing in other parts of their lives, if we don't develop some compassion, we'll never get what we need. But they also have these passionate capabilities and interests. And man, when you can create the environment for them to just turn it loose, you wouldn't believe what comes out.
Yeah.
You met Amy, a marketing assistant, and we needed a new brochure for what we do. I'm not even sure. I gave her min specs at best, and she went away and came back with a stunning piece of work.
Right.
All I knew was she was an awesome writer who loved to take pictures.
Awesome.
Put this whole thing together. One of the things I'm most proud of, and that had nothing to do with it.
Yes.
Seriously.
Yes. I love that statement. One of the things I'm most proud of, and I had nothing to do with it. Well said.
So I would say for leaders, number one priority.
Mm.
Why? Why do you do? And for heaven's sakes, if you're in business, don't start with money.
Yes.
Profit is not a purpose. Profit is a beneficial result of work well done, and it's vital.
Yes.
But it's not a purpose. And if you're in ministry, numbers are not your purpose.
Yes.
And a lot of ministry people, their number one thought is attendance, all those sorts of things. Why do you exist? Number 2, and serve first. Jack Welch at GE said, in this organization, if you're not serving the customer, you better be serving somebody who is. And we've got that all upside down, where people are serving up instead of serving out and down.
Very good.
Create your organization in a way that where collaboration is almost unavoidable. And I mean cross-disciplinary collaboration. Actually, the 4th thing is you have to really drive data-driven innovation. Innovation is wonderful, but if you don't have a rapid cycle way of tracking what's working and what's not. So it doesn't have to be perfect data, and it doesn't have to always to be qualitative data. But you have to have a steady inflow of data
Yes.
to allow you to make the micro changes as you're adapting.
So I have a question about the collaboration for a second, because it's such a critical element of this. Um, what can an organization do? Because it really, you talked about creating an environment where collaboration and cross-functional collaboration is almost inevitable. What can an organization do if the members of their team are actually geographically dispersed and working remotely? How can we facilitate or nurture an environment that naturally fosters collaboration in that space?
Well, it is, and for many it's more challenging, but there are all sorts of technologies available. You probably know much more about this than I do, Michael. All sorts of technologies that are available that allow that to happen. Things like a webinar.
Yep, we're doing it now.
These sorts of things, and shareware that allows people to edit and have input on things.
Sure, yeah.
I think that's important that we learn how to do that, but not lose sight of the fact that there's always a relational component.
Exactly, yeah.
So it can't always be at a distance. I mean, you have to find a way to blend it.
Yeah, we need to find a little bit of a communication cadence.
Yeah.
And find a cadence where with some regularity, it doesn't have to be frequency, but at least regularity, where there's that touch point. There's the electronic touch, there's the vocal touch, like what we're enjoying or what our audience is enjoying today from us. Then there's the personal touch, which may be, financially speaking, has to be less frequent, but does have to exist.
Absolutely.
Great. So I wish we could sit here and talk for a few more hours, and I'm so enjoying this so much. But a couple of calls to action that you as the audience can enjoy here. We've given you a little bit of the teaser of the content for Leading in Disorienting Times. If you want to continue your Leading in Disorienting Times journey, there are 3 ways that you can do that. The first is you can buy the book, authored by Peter Dickens as well as Gary Nelson. And you can purchase it on Amazon, and you can see the link here. And we'll also send you the link in a follow-up email to this webinar. In fact, what I'll do now is I'll actually just chat this link into our GoToMeeting console here, so that you can enjoy access to that. There you go. And the second way is you can actually sign up for the program. There's actually a whole multi-year program on this. Peter, tell us a little bit about the program, Leading in Disorienting Times.
Not multi-year, multi-month. Over 6 months. It's a cohort-based master's certificate in leadership. And I've designed it. I've done a lot of work for some of the big business schools in their executive development areas. It's designed for leaders in the church, parachurch, and not exclusively, but that's the design of it. So information on the web, and we're really excited about it. But I would also say to the third point, I've been a consultant my whole life, and I love meeting with intact leadership teams to talk about some of these concepts. How can we help them to apply it in their own environment? So my email address is there. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, want some additional literature in terms of articles and so on. I've just had a new article that's coming out in July, written particularly for organization development people, but it brings some of these ideas to life around organizational change. So.
Very good. Very good. So I'm going to keep that up on the screen while we take our questions and answers here. If you haven't already submitted some questions, I invite you in the audience right now to submit those questions, and we'll take 5 minutes to review and see what questions we want to field here. Just give me a moment as I digest one, and my face is very close to the camera, so I'll lean back as I read. Yeah, more of comments than questions are in, and thank you for those. We enjoy those. If you have questions, we'll give you another minute just to submit them. If not, we'll invite final comments from Peter while you think of those.
Well, can I get access to all those, Michael?
Absolutely.
And will I know who sent them?
Yep, you'll know who sent them as well. So if you're contributing to the conversation here with some commentary, which we very much value, we will be able to provide a record of that commentary to Peter, and perhaps it may trigger further conversation offline. So here's a question from
Well,
the
what I
audience
was going to
member.
suggest is if I have access to their email, I can respond
Perfect.
personally.
Perfect. Great idea. Thank you. All right, we have a question here. How important is inclusiveness to transforming the system, and what can you do when leaders lead you out of decisions that affect you? Great question.
It's a fantastic question. Number one, to me, inclusion is massively important. And most of my work is helping leaders understand how important it is. But I understand your point coming from the other direction. My response is finding means and ways to make your voice and your thoughts visible in your own organization. I used to hear this a lot from people. Well, nobody invites me to the meeting. I'm not included at the meeting. And my response maybe sounds a bit harsh. And that is, find ways to demonstrate your value. So if you know a meeting is going on, to use that example, and you're not invited, but you have a sense of the topic, there's nothing to be gained from banging on the door and ranting and raving, but offering an email that is thoughtful and reflective and helpful to a general discussion of something without any finger pointing or blame can be very, very powerful.
Yes.
If you hear a conversation is taking place and you're familiar with an article or some research, offering that to the person who is leading that particular initiative, again, no strings attached. I mean, it's a bit of a selling technique. Demonstrate your value to those in your organization to start to build up over time a sense of advocacy.
Yeah.
That when you're not in the room, somebody is thinking, man, we should have Fred here. He had some interesting thoughts on that.
Yes.
But banging on the door and getting mad has never worked.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and sometimes that happens really out of a fear of losing that control. And we have
Absolutely.
a question here from the audience, and admittedly states that lack of control is scary. So how do you as a leader, what can we do to deal with that fear as a leader and really embrace the complexity in which we live?
Well, I guess I would speak from my faith perspective. First of all, I have never been in control. God's always been in control. And I don't mean that to mold that to him and not me, but God is in control. And I believe that we have a loving God who wants nothing but good to come of things. So it's theologically and spiritually easier, I guess, to let go of the control. But my question back would be, reflect on a time when you thought you were in control, and then really be honest. How much control did you actually have? You may find you had far less than you thought you did. You had compliance, to go back to your earlier point, and you may have had submission. But my guess is you didn't have anywhere near the control you thought you had.
Right.
What I find when we think about leadership from this perspective is it's incredibly liberating.
Yes.
I was coaching a physician leader who launched an initiative that was amazing, had amazing impact, went viral. When I spoke to her a couple of months ago as a follow-up on some research I was doing, we were laughing about it. She said, Peter, it's out of my hands. I mean, it's all working, but I feel like, and I love this, she says, I feel like I'm the laziest leader there ever was. because she was teasing with and playing with that old mindset that if I'm in control, it must be hard work.
Right.
Because it takes that much to rein in good people.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's
a big shift. Happy to talk to you one-on-one about that one.
absolutely. Well, we have some amazing questions coming in now. We're at the top of the hour. What I'll do is maybe take 2 or 3 more of the questions that have come in. You can continue to submit them. Peter's kindly offered to follow up offline as well for those questions that'll go unanswered. To be respectful of your time, we recognize that we're at the top of the next hour now. So if you do need to go, you're welcome to do so. Peter, are we able to take another 5 and 10 minutes and continue fielding questions? So for those of you who might miss this, you can also catch the video recording that we will provide for you in a follow-up email as well. So let's take a couple more questions for those who are able to stay on and for those who watch the video afterwards. Here's a simple, practical question. What can we do to encourage collaboration? How can we trigger it?
So I would say start with defining that as one of your values. And a parallel to that is define diversity as one of your values. We know that from the research that the most dysfunctional teams are the most diverse. But we also know that the highest functioning teams are the most diverse.
Right.
The most collaborative teams are the most diverse. And the difference is 2 things. Number 1, they have deep respect for the differences of the other.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, they have a common purpose.
Common purpose.
If you ask a group of people to collaborate, but everybody has a different sense of purpose, it'll go nowhere.
Yeah.
So it has to start with purpose. And then asking the question before you, even as you're putting something together, not only do we have representation from all the different critical stakeholder groups, but do we have ethnic, cultural diversity? We use the Myers-Briggs tool all the time. So do we have cognitive diversity, personality diversity? And if not, go get it.
Yeah. Well, what if leadership actually objects to what's coming from other members of the team? How can they navigate that?
Well, you better first of all, check your own ego.
Yeah.
Why are you objecting?
Beautiful.
Is it because it wasn't your idea? Is it because you have some idea as to why it won't work? Is it because it's just not your cup of tea? Or do you have a legitimate concern that if voiced properly could become an additional birdseed in the bucket? So it's not to abdicate your responsibility as a leader, right? But to listen carefully and engage in that reflective process. Why am I having a negative reaction to this? And if you feel it's legitimate, having a threat-free conversation to say, I love these parts of it, can we consider that? For those on the receiving end, if I may, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
One of the things my wife, as an executive coach, has taught me is to listen carefully when people complain. We have a tendency to say, stop complaining, stop complaining. But people only complain about stuff they really care about. So listen to a complaint and frame it as a poorly worded request. So when I hear somebody complaining, my brain has to say, and what has to come out of my mouth is, Michael, what I hear you really saying is that you value X, Y, Z, and you're not saying it here.
I'm going to use that with my 3-year-old. I'm constantly amazed at how Jesus, knowing that Judas was actively in the process of betraying him,
Yep.
allowed him to continue, in some cases almost seemed to nurture nurture his defiance. And you don't really see much instance where you see Jesus, correcting Judas. If anything, we see Jesus correcting the ones that he knows is on board.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll take one more question here. And thank you for those who are still on. Still quite a high level of engagement here. All right. Okay, this is interesting. This question really speaks to the element of the fact that there are internal factors and external factors that are uncontrollable in the organization, many of which are negative influences from the outside. Can you speak a little bit to how to navigate that reality?
That could be a whole another 1 hour webinar.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes a situation complex.
Yes.
Is that we no longer can think in terms of closed systems over which we have control. But we're constantly being buffeted by all sorts of influences. What we're learning from the field of positive organizational studies is that in highly turbulent times, there seems to be not necessarily an equal balance, but there's a relationship between risk and danger and opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Chinese have a wonderful ideogram for the word crisis. The Chinese word is wei ji, which means literally danger opportunity. So when I see what appears to be a crisis, do I immediately gravitate to a risk management, problem-solving perspective for which we are well trained in our MBAs, or I think of it as a lens that I can intentionally turn and say, yeah, I see all that, but where's the opportunity here?
Yes.
And what we know from the research is that when people are focused on opportunity, you shift the dynamics completely. They become more energized, more engaged, more optimistic. And whatever it is you focus on, you get more of.
Yes.
So in a sea of turbulence, where's that island of opportunity?
Yes.
And how do I head towards that? Highly recommend Daniel Kim's book, Blue Ocean Strategy.
Beautiful. Excellent book.
Excellent book. Provides you with a way of doing that. But we could talk for another hour. I'm definitely respond more fully by email to all of these, but that one fascinates me.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you to the audience for your excellent questions and commentary. If you wanted to contact Peter, again, his email address is on your screen, pdickens@tyndale.ca. And I want to leave you with one final thought of encouragement, because this seems like a very scary webinar that we just did. But there is good news. There are folks that are doing this well and are helping others to do this well, such as Peter Dickens with us today. And, I'll leave you with this thought that God left for Joshua in Joshua chapter 1 as he was preparing for his period of leadership in a disorienting time. And he tells him to be strong and very courageous and look to the Word of God and observe to do it, and he will be successful. And we say also to you that same level of encouragement. You can and will be successful if you embrace the realities of it, look to the biblical perspectives, and remember that God is with you. Be courageous.